Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Celtic Way. I am your host, John McGinley. I'm joined by Kevin McKenna this morning for our chat through the latest Celtic news and views. We've got a fair amount to talk about today. We're going to be going through some Greg Taylor stuff, a couple of transfer bits, some stuff on Callum Osmand based on a chat that Tony had with a former Fulham coach. So plenty to be getting on with. Before we start, though, I think we're just going to briefly talk about the Diogo Jota news, which is a heartbreaking news this morning. The Liverpool player has passed away, aged 88, involved in a tragic car crash in Spain, and is no longer with us. It's a massive story. Everyone's talking about it in our live chat, so I just thought we should mention it at the top of the show. Really devastating news, Kevin. Just not what you want to hear on a Thursday morning.
Yeah. God rest him. He's been a fine player for Liverpool, and yeah, his loss will be really badly felt, not just by his family, but all of us really. Apart from take away his status as a top class footballer, he's just a young man.
Yeah.
At the peak of his powers. He just got married the other week. It's just so tragic.
It's tragic. I mean, there's not really much for us to say about it other than that. Just the tragedy of it and the upset of it. I was seeing the photos of his wedding last week, and it's the kind of thing that does get to me and does upset me. And I know everyone's upset in our live chat this morning. Everyone will be upset for the days to come, and we feel for everyone who was close to Jota, Diogo Jota, I should say. I don't want to confuse the situation. I know there's a Celtic player called Jota, but this is the Liverpool player. If you're just joining us, there'll be a lot of people devastated, and our hearts go out to Diogo Jota's family and Liverpool supporters as well, who will feel a fonder connection for him than most people.
100%. Yeah. We're thinking about them all.
Yeah. Okay, so it's hard to move on from there, folks, but we're going to try and get through today's Celtic news as best we can. One thing I wanted to touch on was Greg Taylor's exit. Obviously, that's been big Celtic news this week. I think it's been in the post for a while. Everyone knew it was coming. He's given an interview to Sky, though, Kevin, just going into his details, the details around why he made the decision that he made. And he told Sky Sports, "It's probably the toughest decision I've had in my career. When I left Kilmarnock in 2019, it was that bit easier. I was progressing and wanted to go and play for the biggest team in Scotland. At that time, there probably wasn't many who believed I would play as many games as I did, but the one person who really did was myself. I was lucky to go and play 200 plus games for Celtic, which was unbelievable. So it wasn't easy. There was a million things to weigh up, but I just felt it was the right time to do it. I wanted to play regularly, and that is probably the big factor." Now, despite that, that desire to play regularly, he was asked about Kieran Tierney's return and whether the competition for places there played a factor. He played that down a little bit. I don't think he wanted to make it into a Taylor versus Tierney thing. He said, I would certainly not say that is fair. There's been competition for my place at Celtic in the whole 6 years I was there, and it was not something I ever shirked from. I loved that. It drove me on and helped me find my best level. I wouldn't say it was particularly keen coming back. It just felt like it was the right time for me to try something different. It seems to me he's been told, obviously, Kieran Tierney's coming in to be first choice and he won't be playing as regularly. He feels he's now established himself as a first choice player, if not for Celtic, then for another club. And Pauk seemed to have offered him a nice route for him and his family to go and enjoy this phase of his career.
Yeah. He's a sensible young man, Greg Taylor. He's conducted himself with a lot of class throughout this whole saga. Even as far back as last year, when speculation about his position was coming up, and at a time when quite a lot of Celtic fans were saying he was a weak link. And I've got to hold my hand up and say, me and others have occasionally criticised aspects of his game. However, he really has conducted himself well throughout. He's maintained his dignity. He doesn't criticise anybody. He doesn't sort of rise to any bait. He's got nothing to prove. He's dead right. None of us probably felt that he would be making more than 200 appearances over his 6 years. And he gave us everything. He won a barrel load of medals, um, and he just can't be faulted. He gave
Yeah.
everything, played at the best of his ability, um, turned in some excellent performances in big games. And I hope that he'll be fondly remembered for his contribution in a very enjoyable time to be a Celtic fan. I also noticed his quite smart rejoinder to Chris Boyd on social media. Chris Boyd was suggesting that not only had he been a Rangers fan before he joined us, but they might go back to supporting Rangers. How dare he? And his response was, "Nah, I'll keep supporting the world's most successful club."
Yeah. I've always considered Greg Taylor to have a media savvy beyond most Celtic players. He knows how to deal with the media. He's not suffered fools gladly. At times, he's answered questions directly and defended himself and his teammates at times. Even in moments he has endured moments at Celtic where it hasn't always been about success. He was obviously part of the very troubling 2020-21 season as well, and I thought he's just acquitted himself with class, like you say, throughout his career. And I think he's left with class, despite he's left on a free transfer. But I think he did that moment. I don't think Celtic were ever going to get a massive fee for Greg Taylor, and he's gone about it the right way. He's like you say, he continues to talk up Celtic, and I think he'll continue to talk up Celtic for years to come. So yeah, we wish him all the best, and now it's laid clear as well. Like he's left because he wants to play regular first team football, and that it's not hard to surmise that, but that he's put that out there just clears up. There's no rumblings of why did he leave. What was Brendan Rodgers thinking here? He's just kind of cleared it all up. It's all out in the open. He's moved for his reasons, his personal reasons, based on his career and his lifestyle, and we wish him the best of luck.
It's a good move for him, John.
Yeah,
he's going for a right good. He's going to a right good team in a big football playing country. It'll be a great experience, a great cultural experience while he's still a young man for him and his family. He'll hope to, make appearances for Scotland. Yeah. He'll be playing in a really competitive league. He'll probably get European football. How many other players, I'm not just talking about Celtic players, who are with a big club, who become, second or third choice, and they hang around because of the wages and the status. And he's decided, well, I've still got a lot of games in me. It's a short life being a footballer, and I want to spend as much of my career actually playing at a decent level. He's an impressive young man. I couldn't. I'd really wish him all the best. I'll be watching his performances and his club's results. Along with all the other clubs' results that I watch we've got for the former players of us.
And listen, Kevin, besides anything else, when we are freezing in the middle of January checking our radiators,
Correct.
Greg Taylor will be enjoying himself in Greece. So there's always that. That is never a bad thing. Let's move on to a couple of transfer bits. Hayato Inamura has left Japan to fly to London, I think initially to go through a medical before travelling on to Scotland and going through his unveiling. The reports are that he's been signed for a fee of £250,000, Kevin, which is not a lot at all. And I think that kind of backs up for me and my feelings about this transfer deal throughout it being reported is that Inamura's coming in to be developed over time. I think he's the classic, and I hate using this word because it has connotations now, but the classic project sign-in of someone who Celtic see a long-term future for rather than coming in to make an impact in the first team immediately. That's just my sense of it, Kevin. Other people might have different views on that. I don't think Inamura's been signed to come in and sort out Celtic's central defensive issues in terms of depth and starters there. That just it's not how it reads to me.
I think your take on it is a lot kinder than mine, John.
Okay,
Call me a
give us
cynic.
it then, Kevin. Because no, but
Call,
seriously, I think a lot of people that do have their doubts about this deal. So give us that side of
well,
things.
I just for project signing and development, um, what goes through my mind is that this has been a nice wee deal with an agent to keep them sweet for future
Mm,
signings,
okay.
um, which is not unheard of. You
Hmm.
know, could you take someone off my books, for a CV? And that person might have two or three other people on his books that we might be interested in at some point in the future.
So you think this is Celtic just keeping their feet in the Japanese market? Then is that kind of
Yeah,
your take on it? Right.
yeah. I
Okay.
mean, look, I'm saying this, that's pure speculation. I do
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
have
Yeah.
any inside knowledge. My contacts are not that good. It's just the way these things tend to work out. It's, Celtic could come back and say, no, we've identified this young man as having a rare ability, and we think he fits the profile of Brendan Rodgers' model of playing football going forward. And at 250k, it represents a small investment. And who knows, in 4 or 5 years, we might be selling him for 12 or 13 million after he's played 250 games for us,
Hmm.
and is starring for the Japanese international team.
It's easy. It's easy to have doubt, though, isn't it? I understand the doubt because I think and I said this earlier in the week or last week that Daiza Maeda, Kyogo, Reo Tate, they'd all achieved to some level in the J League beyond what Inamura seems to have done. Even someone, it's just it feels to me it's more like a. He's definitely not established in Japan. Is what I'm trying to say. I don't think he's
Yeah,
established as
yeah.
a
It's
as a
just
star in Japan yet.
it's yeah, just it doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
No, actually, I'll withdraw that. I'm not saying it doesn't make sense. There's nothing about it. There's no precedent for this. There's it's shrouded in mystery. As you were saying, previous forays into the Japanese market, it's been for players, including the three you mentioned, and two or three others who maybe didn't, play as many times for us as we would have liked. But they still came with a pedigree.
Yeah.
We're picking up somebody who hasn't even established himself in the league. Oh, well, he's not had time to establish himself in the league. So either Celtic have seen something, they've done all their bona fides, and they've received rave reports from him, from people who are cognizant or know all about the J League, and I've said to them, this guy is a superstar in the making. Get in now while he's available so cheaply. Fine. I accept that if it's true. Forgive me if I also indulge in a little speculation that there might be a more cynical, strategic, in inverted commas, thought process behind this one, John.
And listen, we don't mind a bit of cynicism on the show. We're plenty of
Aye.
us are positive enough. It's good to have a different view, Kevin. There's always people in our chat and the comments who have different opinions to myself. Of course, I'm of the opinion I'm very much in the unknown on this one. There are question marks for me around it, but I guess until we see the guy play or we get a sense of what Brendan Rodgers' plans for him are, we'll never know really, I guess. But I think it's also going to. I'm keen to see how the club announce the signing and promote the signing and what kind of level that's given as well. Because sometimes you can read a bit between the lines and stuff like that. What Brendan Rodgers is saying about a player. For instance, I think Brendan Rodgers, although Callum Osmand is a young player who doesn't have a single professional game in his career, I get the sense that Brendan Rodgers is fully behind that one and sees Callum Osmand as someone who can come in and play some sort of role in the squad after assessment, just the way he's talking about him and stuff like that. So I'm keen to see what Brendan Rodgers is saying about Inamura when he does arrive.
What What I will say is that because of Brendan Rodgers' experience when he was first, in his first stint as manager for us, where there was a lot of speculation, and I can say that this speculation was well founded, that one of the contributory factors to him leaving mid-season was that there were players rocking up to Lennoxtown that Brendan Rodgers hadn't seen, and that, you know, therefore when he was agreeing to come the second time, you know, we assume he was given assurances he would be in complete control of all signings. So yeah, let's hope he's all over this. He's liked what he's seen. He trusts the reports he's been given by people close to the action in Japan. And look, you know, if this young guy ends up nodding that a last minute winner against Rangers in a cup final or a crucial game in the next couple of seasons, feel free to come back and remind me of what I've just said here.
And listen, even if Celtic are taking a flyer here, and there's an element of keeping their feet in the Japanese market, whatever, it's not maybe not the worst thing in the world if it's only for 250.
It happens, you know.
Yeah.
No bother, you know.
Yeah.
Great.
The other bit of transfer news just kind of bubbling away is that Gustav Lagerbielke seems to be on his way out of the club to Braga in Portugal. He's set to take part in a medical this week. £2 million is the exit fee that's been quoted for him. Lagerbielke spent last season on loan at FC20, didn't really do much in the season before at Celtic, never really convinced. He was given initial opportunities, but there was always issues there for me. It's easy for me to say now, but I do think if you go back and look at videos that was on a couple of years ago, I was never a big fan of Lagerbielke. He never convinced me in a Celtic shirt. So there's people who felt like maybe he should have been given more opportunities, considering he did all right in Sweden and has done okay in Holland. But for me, it's a natural pattern of the ways here, and if you can get £2 million for him, then I'm all for that.
Yeah, £2 million sounds like a decent fee. Although, you know, we are dropping, 1.5, 2 million from when we first signed him.
Yeah, that's true.
That's a puzzling one.
We're talking about all this kind of agent stuff. There was chat at the time that was all connected to Starfelt and all this kind of thing. And that, you know, people were saying that, you know, if you let Starfelt leave, I've got this new upcoming Swedish defender ready to step in. I think there's an element of truth to all that. Again, these are the machinations of the transfer market, Kevin. Sometimes it works out for you, sometimes it doesn't. For me, Lagerbielke just never had the profile for me.
He did have a good pedigree. You know, he was in the international team of he was in the squad of an international team who are miles ahead of Scotland. Yeah, that is puzzling. I suppose in the best of all possible worlds, I'd like to see them be given a few more games. I just feel that Brendan just didn't fancy him for some reason or another.
He looked nervous to me when he played for Celtic, and that's what I would say. And I don't think Brendan Rodgers likes that hesitancy in a Celtic player. Brendan, regardless of ability, Brendan Rodgers demands the Celtic players are fully committed and fully up for the challenge, which is probably why, you know, people would say Liam Scales lacks some ability, but I think what Liam Scales has is he has a good mentality, and he will go in and give us all in a Celtic shirt. And I just think that Lagerbielke, there was a hesitancy there, nervousness, whatever it was, that just never convinced me personally. So I'm not particularly surprised Brendan Rodgers didn't fancy him, to be honest.
Yeah, I accept all that. I just hope that when Brendan Rodgers is getting his players together, that he reminds them that he doesn't like hesitancy and shows them a video of that bloody Scottish Cup final, which had hesitancy and complacency written all over it. I'm actually, as the close season's going on, I've got even more annoyed.
In all seriousness, do you think that will be part of as Brendan Rodgers collects the group together? And I know some players come back to training and come back to Lennoxtown later than others. But when the group is finally together and Brendan Rodgers gives his big pre-season sermon, do you think that Scottish Cup final is going to factor in how he talks to the players here, or
Well,
is it one of those ones where they just move on?
It should. We shouldn't just move on, because it was a shocking performance in the kind of the set piece game of the season to clinch a treble, and it just looked like after we'd scored, there was a sense that we don't even need to bother because they're not very good and they've not landed a punch on us, so we'll just collect the cup as usual. And the fans can't expect Hollywood, every time we play at Hampden, and they got their just desserts. I was appalled by that performance, and I thought there was a lot of complacency, and I even knew, like, just the way they celebrated, the kind of humdrum way they celebrated the goal. It's like, nah. Hey, I'm saying nothing more about it because I've said, but it's still, it really. I was chatting to a colleague of mine at the paper who's a Aberdeen fanatic, and kind of brought it all home again. And he's saying,
it shall never be mentioned again, Kevin. We'll give you that piece.
He was giving it that. I can spare us a cup. It meant so much to us, and I know that. And lovely, lovely, lovely. But yeah.
So how are you feeling about this first phase? How is everyone feeling? Let everyone in the live chat leave your comments as well, but you as well, Kevin. How are you feeling about this first phase? This feels like the first phase is over now of pre-season. We've had we're getting into the friendly stage of everything now, where everything's kind of magnified a little bit. Brendan Rodgers said the other day that sometimes these games aren't friendlies when you're at a bigger club. They're more like tests because there's so much scrutiny on everything that happens anyway. So I know Celtic are playing Queen's Park tomorrow, obviously. How are you feeling about the squad? Tierney and Nygren coming in seem to be, first team signings. Osmand's more of a development player. Inamura, question marks, as we've just mentioned. How are you feeling about everything going into this friendly phase?
I want to see a lot more. I'm still looking for another striker. I also think there's a distinct possibility we'll lose a couple of our big players.
Yeah.
Because someday, as the countdown gets closer to the deadline day, that's when people start brandishing big checks. And of course, there are 2 or 3 of our players, who have got a price in their head, which Celtic would consider acceptable. Therefore, we have to be alive to that. But we're getting into these friendlies. I'd like another at least 2 more.
A little bit more, yeah.
If you're talking about cynicism again and doing people favours, just look at this friendly against Queen's Park, and I know we've got Cork City next week and we're off to Portugal, and then we've got Newcastle. But if these are games where Brendan Rodgers wants to kind of establish a pattern or see how new players fit into the way that he wants to play, fine. But not long after that, we've got our Champions League qualifier. Not very long after it. And I've said this before, I don't want to be in a position where, a week before that, we're signing somebody and expecting to get them up to speed and get to know all their new players, their new colleagues. What do I know? I know it's not as easy as that, but we need at least 2 more starters.
You're looking for urgency, aren't you? You're looking for those, and someone just mentioned
because out of those 4 signings, only 2 of them really can be considered, certain starters, and one of whom we've known about since the start of the year, i.e. Kieran. So, come on.
Hazel Finn says here, I think most Celtic fans are waiting on the big incomings. It feels like we're skirting around the fringes just now. That's fair. There's a fair enough element to that. I do think. I I've seen Celtic not sign anyone decent at this stage of the season before. So I guess we'll see what sort of urgency comes in the next couple of weeks. It's sometimes tempting to just also go, the signings will come, but we've also seen in other transfer windows that people say that right up until the end of August, and the signings haven't come. I do think Celtic need another couple of players in the next couple of weeks. I would say the next 2 to 3 weeks. That's fair to give them enough preparation time for this Champions League qualifier. We're almost
in the last 3 seasons we haven't had to play a Champions League qualifier.
Yeah, and that's a big factor.
So the sense of urgency, the sharpened sense of urgency hasn't really been there the last 3 seasons because we've been given an extra month. We don't have that luxury this time. I know we're seeded, but you look at some of the clubs.
It's going to be a difficult game. Yeah, it's going to be a difficult
game.
Anybody
thinking that because we're seeded, we'll get a kind of a favourable draw. That the term favourable draw doesn't really apply to any of the teams at this stage in the long drawn out qualifying process.
And whoever we play is going to be, you mentioned this last week, but whoever we play is going to be a champion of their nation, just like Celtic are. So they're a team that are coming off a successful season as well, which always makes teams dangerous.
Yeah. So, let's just wait and see. And see.
So we have some insight on the website. I'll put the link in the comments below when I'm off air. Callum Osmand coming in from Fulham. Not played a professional game, as we know, so how do we get a sense of what kind of player he is? Well, Tony spoke to one of his ex-Fulham coaches, someone who worked closely with him over the years at Fulham, from the age of under 15 up to quite recently, I think, and was actually his coach and manager for the under-21 Premier League Cup final. Fulham beat Tottenham Hotspur in, and Osmand scored a hat-trick in that game, and I think that was the game that really put him on the radar of other clubs. Brendan Rodgers said the other day that multiple teams were after him this summer, and that Celtic beat a queue of teams. So interesting insight on what kind of player he is, his mentality. I think what struck me from the comments, and as I say, I'll put the link in below, was that he's just very tenacious and has a strong self-belief and a strong work ethic, and is very disciplined and strong in training. He reminded me, and this actually, he reminded me of this person in Callum Osmand's first interview with the club, but he's got that personality and calmness that I saw in Matt O'Reilly when he first arrived at Celtic. Just very mature for his age, talks very well, has come through the academy system in England, which, as I've said before, I think prepares people to be good footballers, but very savvy of the environment around football increasingly as well. What do you make of the Osmand thing, Kevin? I know we know little about him, but did you see his first interview and how you feel?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with all of that, but again, maybe I've just had a wee attack of cynicism this week, but I'm thinking, I agree with everything you've said. I saw the interview. I saw what Brendan Rodgers said. I read Tony's piece with his, youth team coach. And at the end of it, I'm thinking, never has so much been written and said about somebody who hasn't actually played a game of senior football. I'm thinking, God, I hope this young lad has been shielded from all of this, because I can't remember somebody we've signed of whom all this has been said. Because normally you would look at all this, right? If you didn't know anything about the lad, you'd think, I wonder how many goals he scored in the Premiership last year. This guy sounds brilliant. Everyone's saying is raving about him. 0 games. So, yeah.
The jury's out, Kevin. The jury's out for you.
Well, and listen, it's even before it gets to the jury, because there's nothing for them to make any judgment on. All we're getting is a very good psychological profile of him. You know,
You've got one fan here, Kevin. Chris Fraser saying Kevin McKenna talks so much sense. So you call it cynicism. People just think it's common. Other people think it's common
Chris,
sense.
I'd be worried about that.
Listen, if you want to read Tony's piece, you can. I'll put the link down below. That's our time up for today. We'll be back tomorrow with plenty more Celtic chat. Yeah, and hopefully once we start getting into the games and start seeing the way Celtic are developing and playing, and if there's any tweaks Brendan Rodgers does make, we see the fruits of that. I think initially the games, Kevin, the Queen's Park game and the Cork game, there'll be a lot of youth players in that team, won't there? Because some Celtic players aren't even back in training yet. The Japanese players, Alistair Johnston, etc. I think there'll be a fair amount of youth players getting minutes in the team.
And it's good. It's good to get to Ireland because we've got such a massive fan base over there.
Yeah,
You know, thousands of whom do marathon 48-hour round trips to see us home and away in all weathers, and it's important that Celtic have a presence in Ireland. You know, and use every opportunity they can to go over there for a couple of days, just to give something back to the supporters that we've got over there.
yeah, I agree with that. We agree with that. I mean, Tony's actually making a trip over to Ireland. He's going to be doing some special reporting over there on some of the Celtic supporters clubs that do make those trips. He's going to be doing some stuff on John Keane. He's going to be doing stuff around the Cork game as well. I think he'll be at the Cork game.
I wish I had Tony's job, I'm telling you.
Tony is the traveller for us, yeah. So we'll look forward to that from Tony. We'll try and get him on the YouTube channel while he's away in Ireland as well to get his thoughts on the road. But he's got a full itinerary. He's got a wee plan of this Celtic and Irish connection, which Tony, Kevin, as it's taken for granted sometimes, isn't it? This connection, and some people like to focus on other some elements of it, but the connection is deep and earned and should be celebrated.
Yeah, we should. Celtic should be looking at making one or two appearances back in Ireland every year, if not more. Even if it's a development squad or it's full of reserves or whatever, just the opportunity for these people to see the hoops on Irish soil, where we started, right, without whom we wouldn't be. Ireland means so much to Celtic, and it means so much to so many supporters over there and their families. And these are families, this is where we all came. Many of us came from.
Yeah.
And it's just a good thing to do. It's a good thing to do. And I'm glad we're going there. And I hope that we go back to Ireland whenever we can at some further point in the season, and that we just maintain that, that deep spiritual, emotional connection.
I fully agree with that. I'm on board with that, Kevin. And listen, thanks for joining us today. Thanks for joining us, everyone, in the live chat and in the comments below if you're checking us out after. As I say, we'll be back on Friday morning with lots more Celtic chat. Have a great Thursday. Goodbye, everyone.